Gold and precious metals are the things people invest in when the economy is doing poorly. It is often given as a dowry in many nations as jewelry in case they get divorced or their husband dies. Precious metals are used to make electronics, computers, chemical catalysts, purifying air and water, and once we reach the full understanding of nanotech, the sky's the limit as to what they can do. It is thanks to this that I always predicted that after the carbon wars, or wars over oil, especially as water filtration from climate change, quantum computers, space travel, battery tech, and other alternative fuels ramp up and require special metals to build or catalyze reactions, create fuels, chemicals, or purification, we would start viewing them as strategic resources even more so, and militaries would be used to secure these resources. Unfortunately, that means lots of wars in Africa. In 2022, NASA will be launching the Psyche probe to the asteroid belt to get close-up imaging of several asteroids, including Psyche16, an asteroid that is one of the top most massive of all the asteroids in the belt. New articles are coming out left and right quoting several scientists and mining companies about this particular asteroid. However, they're mostly only from British tabloids and the International Business Times, which some list as sloppy with their work. In light of studies of the asteroid and the extreme massiveness of it, estimates of Psyche16 is that it's carrying between 8 quadrillion to $700 quintillion worth of precious metals. With space mining, it's possible it could move us into the post-scarcity era where no one would be without, and everyone could benefit in the process. Or, it could lead to wars in space and extreme income inequality. In colonial Spain, they suddenly were swimming in gold and silver with the discovery of the Americas. However, as their currency was based on silver and gold, the value of their money dropped like a rock. This could happen again, but to the entire world. At the moment, space belongs to everyone on the planet. No one nation can claim space, and space cannot be used for warfare. This was great when getting into space was nearly impossible and took a ton of work, but there is a reason why Trump is calling for a space force, even though a strategic command to protect our satellites would be just as useful, if not more so, than an entire separate branch which has an extreme level of logistics to transfer over, just as what happened to the Air Force when they left the Army. It was a ton of work and backlog and a logistics nightmare. Once resources in space become lucrative enough to impact a nation's power structure, a war in space or even terrorism or sabotage may become normal. A nation could also claim ownership, just enriching themselves and dropping worldwide value of the metals. Seeing as only wealthy nations at the moment are anywhere close to having the means to mine asteroids, they would just get richer and richer as the poorer nations get poorer and poorer. Psyche16 is a little over 120 miles in diameter. If you drove a little further than from north to south through Arizona or New Mexico, you would have driven around Psyche16. There is tons of room for all nations to land and mine on, but unless we figure out an agreement to split it up fairly with all nations and all people, it will just lead to wars and a wrecked global economy. Just imagine walking down the street and seeing a gold or silver coin on the road, but it's worth so little that it's not even worth picking up to you. There is a term in geopolitics called the resource curse, where a poor nation suddenly has a resource discovered. Under good conditions, this would mean their entire nation should get very rich, like what happened in Norway with their North Sea oil drilling. But instead it means that multinational extraction companies and corrupt people at the top get richer, while people go without and have to deal with the pollution and destruction it causes. Prior to fiat money, rich people would hoard all the money, then flood the market with it, crashing it, because there was only around 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools of it on the entire planet's surface. When they tanked the markets, they would buy up failing businesses at a steal, then get a bunch of new businesses as they slowly increased the value of gold as they bought more and more of it. Now that they had the business, they could consolidate and monopolize on. This would happen, but at a massive scale, and the space and mining tycoons could be the new robber barons of old, deciding just how fast or how slow the value of precious metals dropped, and we would be at their mercy, as they made things we thought were good investments now worthless. How would we do this mining? Probably through space trains, where they would circle on a constant orbit around from Earth to Mars in the same trajectory, only using fuel to adjust for natural drift. Then there would be a space train to take us from Mars to the asteroid belt. These trains would get loaded up with supplies from Earth, and later the Moon or Mars, and then on their return trips would be loaded with metals. The train would then hand off their payloads to each other when they would meet, and they could take 2 to 10 years to get their payloads home to save fuel and therefore money. The asteroid itself would have a base installed inside caves to prevent against solar radiation, assuming it wasn't all set up to be mined by robots. Space elevators would be the best way to get metals off the asteroid. A space elevator is a line connected to the ground that goes out into space, and a counterweight just far enough out using Earth's centripetal force would hold the line up in space for possibly ever. At the moment, to build one on Earth is impossible, as our materials are not strong enough to overcome the gravitational pull of the planet, and the line would snap no matter how strong we made it, or how many lines we used. Modern carbon fiber and graphene tech is inching us closer, but it will be 50 to 100 years before a fully functioning space elevator can even be attempted. Due to space debris and satellites and airline traffic, damage to the line could spell doom to anyone riding it up, and therefore the line would have to be attached to a giant ship on the ocean with a mass similar to the counterweight and adjust based on traffic and weather patterns above it. We also don't really have good climbers yet for a line like that, although there are robot challenges, especially ones that can be solar powered by a counterweight space station that would convert solar energy into a high-powered laser, shooting it down to the climber and powering it up for its trip into space using all solar power and no rocket fuel. However, our current materials could be used to build a space elevator on the Moon, and perhaps even Mars due to lower gravity, which would eliminate the need for expensive landers and precious fuel. A space elevator for all asteroids would be even easier to build, where ore or refined product more likely could be moved from the asteroid to the space station counterweight that would have a loading ship to be ready to swap payloads out to bring in more fuel, supplies, and perhaps robots. Refining would probably be done on the asteroid as well, or at least in space, because you don't want to take extra weight of impurities, limiting your slow, expensive trip home. They will probably try and figure out the best way to get the purest substances home and leave the slag behind. Once it gets to Earth's orbit, most likely there will be a station to get the metals to the ground. Perhaps they'll use iron or other materials like titanium to encase the super dense materials so they don't burn up and can withstand a trip through the atmosphere, but be light enough that they can still use a parachute to drop it slow enough that it doesn't cause damage from hitting something, but also light enough so that they can use an inflatable raft like the Apollo missions, so there won't be a massive amount of pure precious metals dropping into the ocean and sinking immediately to the bottom. Though by that time, retrieving that metal from the ocean might not be that hard anymore. Humanity can figure out the logistics. We will. It's just a matter of when and how soon, but even more so, how we divide up the resource so anyone benefits and the income inequality and wars don't happen. Though this drive to mine the 16 Psyche, if it even has a fraction of as much precious metals as scientists said to the tabloids predicts, will start a serious robotics boom that will help massively in turning Mars from an outpost into a self-replicating, self-sufficient colony, as I stated in another YouTube video, linked below. From there, terraformation of Mars could truly begin, as listed in my other videos on the subject. Who knows how soon this will happen, and this could either create a massive golden age for humanity or an income inequality dystopia. I'm just saying, I would recommend divesting from precious metals 25 to 50 years from now, or you'll be left with something completely worthless in time, finally killing the idea of the gold standard forever. A big thank you goes out to Elias Garcia Guevara and Joe Taylor, who sponsor the show at $10 a month at the Wapawet level on Patreon. Please consider donating as well if you can, and thank you all for listening.